The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbal.
Welcome to it, midweek editions here at Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbal, and you will get the shout-outs going. Our starting five in the StreamYard. You want to watch the show, participate. Real easy to do with the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Can always follow the show on Twitter as well, at HVarsity Radio. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbal, and can find us on Twitter at Schmidt_radio, at Herbal Essence. Lot to get to. Coach Prime clapping back. Husker baseball continues their midweek woes, but a chance at redemption. Weather permitting tonight, we'll check in with Mike Babcock from Hail Varsity and Hurrdat Sports in about 15 minutes. Evan Bland will check in with Evan around 4:40, and then Joba Chamberlain also joins the show in the 5 o'clock hour. Get there, some football thoughts when it comes to the what-if topic for the Big Red in 2024. We'll play that little game. You have sideline news from A.D. Dannon. And, a fight yesterday at a downtown Lincoln strip club. I've heard this story. We were on the air, so we have proof. We were not involved, but in all seriousness...
Well, I sent you this story during the show yesterday.
I know.
As it's breaking news.
As it's going down. But
man, it would have been a great day for a road show.
Let me ask this, and I want to hear your stories too, not about fights at a strip club, but just moments. You see it in NFL stadiums all the time. There's loaded fan, a lot of time Raider fan, going after another fan, or it's Charger on Charger crime. You see just absolute beatdowns happen in the stands, a lot of times in the third deck, where fans get after it, and it's rough. You've been to a few games.
Yeah.
I have a friend, Jeff the pharmacist, or pharmacist Jeff, big time Denver fan, and he has survived walking into Arrowhead in all his Denver gear, and it wasn't a Merry Christmas. Those weren't the pleasantries exchanged. Or you go to a game in Boulder, per se, wearing your red, or you've either participated or experienced hostile treatment. And sometimes those hostilities turn to fisticuffs, and that's no fun. That's no good. We were walking out of a Chiefs preseason game with a dear friend who... big-time Seattle fan, and as he was walking out, this is, I think, I don't know, this might have been the year that Seattle won the Super Bowl. But anywho, we're walking out, and he's bumping into other Seattle fans, and there weren't many down at Arrowhead, but he's screaming, "Go Hawks!" And, high-fiving other Seattle fans, and it was a last-second drive by the 8th string quarterback for Seattle to win at the buzzer. And all these Chiefs fans are just mean-mugging. I'm like, dude, shh, be quiet. Keep walking. Let's make our 8-mile trek back to the vehicle. But it's interesting. I fast forward, though. Have you ever seen or witnessed a bar fight between sports fans where it just gets unruly? Words are exchanged, drinks are spilled, and I saw it once. It was between a Nebraska and an Iowa fan. I kid you not. This was back in 2009 or 2010, and there's this Iowa fan and this Nebraska fan. It wasn't me and Iowa Russ. Iowa Russ would pummel me. But next thing you know, it's midnight, and the Iowa fans pushed, and he's on kind of high top table seating, and he's pushed back, and the place clears out. He got shoved down because he was running his mouth. And I just it's a first for me. We talk about yesterday's incident at the downtown Gentleman's Establishment where police arrived, the number of women were fighting with one another.
Throwing chairs.
Yeah, this was WWE-esque. You had chairs being tossed, yelling, screaming, and you had 2 women taken into custody, one arrested on suspicion of disturbing the peace. I don't believe it was over sports gaming.
Yeah, I've never seen. Actually,
and I don't think it was over baseball. It wasn't a Creighton versus Nebraska fan.
I've never seen a brawl with my own 2 eyes. I've seen enough on social media, but never seen a brawl between sports fans in person. Probably because in my era, well, let's lay it out first. Husker fans tend to be some of the best fans around. They don't tend to get into fights.
They'll have a beer with you versus throwing a punch.
B, the most likely time for a fight to happen is whenever you get one of those really, really loud visiting fans. The away fans come into the stadium, their team wins, they get real excited afterwards. The beers have been flowing all game long and emotions spill over at the end. And whenever I tend to go on the road to watch Nebraska play, Nebraska tends to lose. I don't think I have seen a single road Husker victory for Nebraska. So, with that in mind, no, I have not seen any sports fans fight. I've seen a couple bar fights in my day, but nothing like too exciting. One time I did see this guy in a full suit pull out a knife and start trying to slash people. This is like 2 months ago.
Was his name Patrick Bateman?
No, he kind of looked like, you're the video game Hitman?
Been a while, but yeah.
Yeah, where it's like the bald dude in the full suit, like red tie, with the vest, like a nice suit, pulling out a knife and trying to swing it at people. He was taken into custody.
Let's get you the starting 5 on that note.
On another note.
Eat Beef is in. Eat Beef, good to check in. I got to say,
Wait, KG with the comment of the day.
I've seen KG is picking up on this fight story. I've seen 2 strippers fighting. It was really embarrassing for me. One of my oldest babysitters, and the other was my second ex-wife. Luckily, the police knew me really well. KG, thank you for bearing a bit of your soul. Eat Beef is in first. We know KG is in. Jeff checks in. Patrick is here. Jay says hello all. Brennan from the Black Hills says what's up. Brian is here. The other Elijah. Cliff, good to have you in. Cliff, what's up, man? Thanks for checking in. As we continue our starting 5. Dylan is here. Dylan, thanks for checking us out on YouTube, Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Like and subscribe. The other Brian is here. Got his Colorado tickets for Nebraska CU. Brian is here. The other Dave. Crew is back. He asked the question, Elijah, did you win the fight? Elijah was not down at the Gentlemen's Club. Chris is here. Anonymous checks in of a strip club fight. Out. Okay, hold on. That has to be devastating to the egos of the performers. Yeah, something like that. If you don't win, I guess the fight.
I think he's going more of like if the patrons begin fighting while you're on stage.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm trying to read into that. Thank you for helping me in my Hooked on Phonics.
If the patrons break out in a fight while you're performing, I get that. That'd be a pretty big ego hit.
Yeah.
Like why
you paying attention to me?
Why are you more worried about smashing the dude's face in than watching me dance? Like instead of throwing single-dollar bills.
Yes. Give till it hurts. Coach Prime's giving a lot of advice. He's responding to all sorts of drama, from one part of drama to the other. Man, you've got the online blowback towards Coach Prime and, of course, Shadur. You've got Xavier Smith. And what a super insightful article by Max Olson of The Athletic to get the response from all those Buff players that hit the portal. Xavier Smith, in this interview, recalled when he was told by Coach Prime to enter the portal because he didn't see a path to him playing. You had Smith admonish Sanders for being so callous in his assessment. He was critical of the coach, and those comments led Shadur, the starting quarterback and son of Coach Prime, to really get insulting on social media. You had this morning Coach Prime making a cryptic tweet statement about, quote, haters that may interpret us as his response to the whole situation. He declared that people don't hate those they don't know, but rather admire them in a negative way. So this thing is off on an awful foot. The honeymoon ended post-Colorado State, where it got real for Colorado. And listen, it's new, it's different how he's approaching college football in the portal. And there's never been a coach like Prime. There's also never been a situation like this where it could go so bad so quickly in just 2 years. And I don't see the Buffs moving on, but he's going to have to really reassess how he does business.
Well, let's lay it out, because I would like to. It hasn't necessarily gone sour. That would happen during the season. I think that will likely happen.
The way they ended the season went sour, and he just doesn't seem super proactive.
And the behind the scenes look-in seems sour, but you can't say it with certainty until the season starts. I know, people living in Nebraska, we all like to think this is the Buffs' downfall. This is Coach Prime's downfall. You can't forget, because I think some Husker fans forgot last year. You can't forget there is still a lot of talent on that team. Depth, maybe not. Let's be clear. Hurrdat Sanders, despite him hopping on Twitter and being a real idiot, is still, from a talent perspective, as it stands right now, probably a top 10 pick in next year's draft. Let's lay that out. When Coach Prime says, my son's getting picked top 5, where's your son getting picked? It's very Prime of him, very, very Deion of him to go out on Twitter and say that, but is he necessarily wrong? I think it shows the gross culture behind the scenes at Colorado and maybe within the Sanders family.
That is the microscope. It's the
microscope, but he's not wrong. Colorado still is a top 10 pick leading their team at quarterback, and you can't overlook a guy who's a top 10 pick at quarterback. So I want to say that right now. I am not saying Colorado has fallen and they're going to go 3-9 this season, because I still think they have a lot of talent. A bad culture a lot of times leads to seasons like that, but we won't know for sure until they step on the field against North Dakota State.
Do you believe that their skill players and their quarterback, and betting on really talented but young guys on the line of scrimmage is a recipe to bind together in tough times? No, because your leader has not only gotten in the bus driver's seat, he is driven over, and then he put it in reverse on kids just less than a year ago he brought to campus. And from the get-go, I guess you shouldn't be surprised, because he was talking about moving luggage from the start, because their roster was not good when he got there. He needed to upgrade talent, upgrade the caliber of player they brought in. But you win and you live and you die on the lines of scrimmage in football. And they're really relying on young standouts to be great early. That doesn't work. Doesn't work in college football very often. If it does work, it's one of the 5. It's not 4 of the 5. You're asking a whole bunch of guys who don't know each other to come together, to buy in, to believe, and then react in a mature way if they get called out. And it's not what is said, but how it's said. And I think that's the biggest problem, and that's the biggest problem with today's athlete. It's not what is said, it's how it's said to some of their sensitivities potentially. Now, during Prime's era, he could take it. He did take it. And he also performed at a high level. But in 2024, it's a different ballgame. You got to be a little bit better communicator, and maybe he is. Maybe he is. Maybe guys just want to play for him. Maybe they believe he can get them to the next level. And right now, from Lincoln, Nebraska, from Omaha, from Central Nebraska, from Northeast Nebraska, it sure looks like there's 2 or 3 guys, 2 of the guys with the last name of Sanders and Travis Hunter, that are the Lawrence Taylor of the group. Then there's everybody else. And if you don't feel like you're getting treated fair, whether you're 18 to 22, you're going to have a hard time selling out for the guy next to you.
Yeah, and there's 2 different takes I'm seeing, both of which I've seen in the stream, and I'm going to bring light to them. First, KG saying Nebraska is going to demolish Colorado. This I know to be true. There is no depth. Why was Bama unstoppable? Depth goes on for a little bit more, but that's essentially the heart of his point. And then I see Montana Husker fan chiming in. There's absolutely no way they don't implode at some point. Going to be a replay of last year. Of those two takes, I err more on the side of Montana Husker fan. That's what I was saying with, like, Colorado still has talent. And you laid out what happens whenever the going gets tough for this team. That's the bigger question to me. I am not. I mean, we were saying the same thing at this time last year. Like, oh, look how small Colorado looks in their spring game. Oh, Deion's all about him. This experiment's never going to work. Yeah, Colorado goes on and demolishes Nebraska.
They were fun, winning 45-41.
When things were going well for them, that Colorado team, I don't want to say looked unstoppable, but they looked like a top 25 team.
They were.
The problem for that Colorado team was when things got tough, they weren't able to band together. And that's where I'm at with this team right now, is there's a lot of talent. It's probably still going to be a fine football team. What's going to happen to that football team whenever they find themselves down by 2 touchdowns in the first half?
No, they're a team of front runners.
Yes.
They're a team of front runners at this point from a far view.
The question to me with them is, does the implosion happen before or after the Nebraska game? Because I think Nebraska would have beat that team handily if they played in Week 11, but you played in Week 2 whenever they were riding high, and they were the better team that day.
Well, Nebraska helped Colorado beat Nebraska on that day in Boulder. More strip club / bar fight stories from you in the stream. Cliff checks in and says, bar fights are regular real-life interactions in the Marine Corps. Don't doubt it. Eat Beef says, we closed a strip club down in college, and on the street corner, my friend yelled at a guy in a Lions jersey, and the guy knocked out his front tooth. Don't mess with Detroit fan. Mike Babcock's on the way to talk some Husker baseball.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Let's say hi to Mike Babcock with Hail Varsity and Hurrdat Sports. Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Cornhead Lager. Get Mike's bi-weekly newsletter at Mike B or Mike B at hurrdatsports.com. That's the email. Send Mike an email. Great write-ups. Babbers, what do you think of the East Stadium for the Big Red? They're moving. They got the U-Hauls out, and it's west side for Nebraska moving forward. That little nugget dropped by 80 Dan, and as Elijah's flashing gang signs at me.
West
Mike,
side.
Come save me.
They had talked about getting that done. It was unclear how quickly they would get it done, but obviously they moved in the right direction, I guess. So you don't have you're looking so you don't have the sun in your eyes late in the afternoon, or
Someone's stealing signs, although it's helmet communication now.
Yeah,
but
that's true. Sign stealing. Yeah.
I did get a kick out of Harbaugh making a phone call to Trev after the Michigan game last year, and the story that was in the World Herald about saying, hey, Trev is about 67 to 70 degrees cooler on that 96-degree day. Thanks. 'Cause we clearly needed it, Michigan.
Yeah, no, it reduces the sign stealing. It also puts you in the shade. You know, the sunshine in your eyes for late afternoon games, I guess. And we know how that is on the other side when you get there before the game starts, and it's an early game. Man, it's brutal up there in the press box with that sun coming in there. So
yeah, it's warm.
Well, my question with this is could you flip sidelines like at halftime of like an afternoon game? Could you do that? Would that be even legal? Like if you get
be a lot of work.
The sun in your eyes in the first half, but then the sun goes down in the second half. Like, could you flip sides during the game? Would that be something you'd even look at doing?
I don't think you could do that, Elijah.
Babber's rules, no. Mike?
No, I think it would be, I don't think that would be right. I don't think you'd do that.
Well, Mike, aside from the obvious playing advantages to being on the west side, do you think there's any advantage to putting a sideline closer to your student section, closer to the band, having a little bit more noise pollution over there? On one hand, you could look at it as the student section helping urge the team on closer to the sideline, but on the other side of things, it could also create some havoc if you're trying to look over at your sideline and right behind your sideline is 40,000 Husker students screaming their head off at you.
Yeah, I think that's always something that seems like in certain situations, it's to your advantage to have the students behind the visiting team raising a ruckus. But again, I don't know. I don't know if that's a legitimate reason to make the decision to change sidelines. But smarter people than me make those decisions, and they have more evidence to make the decisions on.
Well, Mike, at the end of the day, as we discuss this, the Husker team moving sidelines east to west, do you care?
If that's what Nebraska wants to do, I guess I care that I'm glad that they got it done. But to me, it's a game. Football's football. It's still played on the field. You get things, but it. With Matt Rule, I think it's reflective of Matt Rule's approach to things. He's very, very detail oriented, and if he sees that there's any kind of advantage whatsoever by being on the other sideline, he's going to make that decision. And that's the thing that I would look at here and say, there's reason that he's doing it. He doesn't do things without reason, and he's very specific about what he does. And he's very detailed about what he does. And I think that's one of his strengths as a coach.
Mike, I wanted to get your take here in the playoff era, the importance of having your quarterback on campus and it being a high school recruited quarterback versus kind of the one and done or two and through option. Whatever helps you win is the correct answer. That said, you've got a pretty good history of quarterbacks and programs that have gone homegrown where you get that hit on the quarterback. Bama's put a lot of guys in succession into the NFL and won titles along the way, as has Oklahoma. They haven't won titles, but they were playoff bound with, of course, Baker Mayfield and then Jalen Hurts when he transferred out, because he got unseated, but before that he had led. McCarthy was a freshman and then beat out an incumbent to take Michigan to new heights. Is Nebraska on that track with what they have now in the quarterback room to maybe being another choice for future quarterbacks, the most important position in this playoff era? You go homegrown versus hoping you got the portal guy right.
Yeah, I like the fact that you can bring in young quarterbacks and hopefully they stick with you and you can develop them, and they're in the program for 3 or 4 years. They don't just say, I'm out of here. And I think right now Nebraska has 3 very talented guys. Dylan Raiola, obviously, tremendous upside to him from what we saw in the spring game, and but it still comes down to what happens in the fall. And there's going to be further competition in the fall between those top 3 guys, and then we get into the season, and let's see how things go when we get into the season. And that was one of the things that Rule said too, was, hey, we're going to need 3 quarterbacks in the season anyway. So who's going to emerge? Some people have already said it's Dylan Raiola. Let's see what happens. Let's get to the season and let's see what happens when the games begin. When you get in there, when you're not playing a scrimmage against your own team, what happens when you get into the games? That's the defining moment when we know who the quarterback is and who it should be.
Well, Mike, I know you wanted to caution us here, but I'm going to preface this next question by saying, assuming Dylan Raiola is the starting quarterback, which you just specifically told us not to do, but whatever, it's for the question. Assuming Dylan Raiola is the starting quarterback, we've heard reports out from some of the recruits that were in town talking about how impressed they were with Raiola. A lot of other guys impressed with what they saw by Ja'Cory Barney, saying like, man, we can't believe the development he's already shown in 3 months on campus. He's a different player than what we saw back in high school. Whenever you consider those things, Nebraska getting these young guys on the field, developing them up, do you think that you could make the argument that the ripple effect of Raiola could be honestly more important than what he does on the field for Nebraska? And what he does on the field is an important part of this question, but If guys around the country can see a 5-star quarterback go to Nebraska, get developed, maybe someday get an NFL draft pick slot in the higher rounds. I mean, 5 stars around the country could look at that and say, man, I don't need to go to Bama. I don't need to go to Georgia to get a shot at a college football playoff and get myself in the NFL. I can do it at a place like Nebraska or name a school.
Well, yeah, I think that that's really important. I think that the fact that he made the decision to come to Nebraska, that has a direct effect on Nebraska's recruiting, because they look at it and say, hey, this 5-star quarterback made the decision to decommit to Georgia, and he's going to go to Nebraska. That's the first thing in the recruiting. I think he has an impact already from that standpoint. The second thing is the development part, but again, you have to, it depends on the player. You know, some players are going to look at it and say, well, he's already there. Like a quarterback's going to look at that. Are you going to be able to recruit quarterbacks because they're going to say, well, Dylan Raiola's there. You know, he's a 5-star guy. They develop him. What opportunity am I going to have? Other players around him are going to say, hey, that's a 5-star guy at Nebraska. You know, I'm going to go there because obviously something is attractive about Nebraska. And I think that's the approach that you see in recruiting. I think it's a very positive from that standpoint, and the talent that you get that to surround him. But it gets more difficult, I think, with quarterbacks because they look at it and say, well, he's there. They're going to develop him. If he's the starter right away, as you've put him in there, you know, he could have 3 years before he decides that he wants to step out to the NFL if he ends up taking the job and holding on to it and developing the way that you would expect him to.
This could be a tremendous showcase not only on the field for Nebraska, but also open the door for future talented quarterbacks to follow if it goes right for Raiola, if it goes right for Nebraska, and if it goes right as a hub, kind of a place to be. And that is what you saw Lincoln Riley do for so many years at both his stops. I mean, he's got a long history. Same with Ryan Day at Ohio State. I mean, they put a bunch of quarterbacks into the first round. And you also have Bama. I mean, they made the shift from game manager at quarterback to difference maker at quarterback, and you get one and then more will follow, but you got to have success on the field. Mike, about 90 seconds, and thanks for jumping in. Reaction to last night against Creighton?
I thought, when Nebraska got a run in the first inning, it's like, well, finally there's going to be develop some momentum. And then Creighton gets, 6 runs, and it's just like these midweek games have become a problem for Nebraska. I think is that Nebraska's 5th consecutive Tuesday loss. Obviously the focus is the weekend and the conference, because Nebraska's in a good position still with 3 series left to Nebraska could win the conference still in the regular season. But it's very frustrating to see how the pitching, how many pitchers you used and how many runs you gave up against Creighton, and why Creighton was able to sweep the series. 3-game series is only the 3rd time they've ever done a 3-game series sweep of Nebraska. Very frustrating.
Mike Babcock with us from Hail Varsity and Hurrdat Sports, at Mike B at hurrdatsports.com. Get him an email and subscribe to his bi-weekly newsletter. Make that happen. All sorts of great stuff on the Huskers and Big Red football at MD Babs on Twitter. Mike, we'll check in next week. Appreciate the thoughts today.
Hey, thanks for having me, coaches.
There he is. Mike Babcock with us. Hail Varsity continues. We're powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for spending time at Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager. Reminder to help friends and neighbors ravaged by the tornadoes last week. And be sure to visit the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill location and help out disaster relief all week long from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. Again, the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill location in La Vista. So they are collecting hygiene items, clothing, non-perishable foods, and that's all donated to the Heartland Hope and Project Intentional for distribution to those in need. And a reminder, can donate $10 to the American Red Cross. Can text Red Cross in all capitals to 90999. So do that if you feel obliged to. Appreciate Nebraskans coming together. Evan Bland with us from the Omaha World Herald at Evan Bland, OWH. Evan, thanks for a little bit of an audible. It's great to have you in and talk some football and Husker baseball. Want to start with some Nebraska football, though, and just kind of the momentum as you see it right now and the buzz that from Saturday into the offseason, the management and I guess the hype train. How fast is that going right now in your assessment?
Well, I don't think you should take the corners very fast on that hype train. I'll put it that way. Like it was really impressive. I mean, everyone's going to talk about Dylan Raiola, and I think that's justified based on what we saw in a half from him. I mean, he spread the ball around. He put touch on throws. He could sling it. He had the timing. I thought the downfield route he completed to Alex Bullock was one that not a lot of Nebraska quarterbacks could complete. Maybe not a lot of Nebraska quarterbacks would have attempted in recent years. And it validated a lot of what we'd heard in the spring, what we had seen in limited media sessions with open practice. And yeah, look, it's still half of spring ball and much of the starting defense was sitting out. But, I thought maybe the most encouraging thing was when Raiola was in there, and the other quarterbacks did well too, but when Raiola was in there, the routine plays looked routine. There were swing passes. There were a couple of screens. Just the handoffs were uneventful. So I thought that part was really encouraging. And then you're just kind of reminded, oh, by the way, look at this young group of receivers with what Jalen Lloyd's becoming, with what Ja'Cory Barney is doing as an early enrollee breakout. You see Malachi Coleman on the sideline, and you're reminded, oh, yeah, he's going to be back in the fall. I think you feel pretty good about that offense. And, that to me was the thing about the spring was, okay, you kind of have a pretty good sense of what the defense is going to be. There's a ton of veterans, a ton of leaders on that side of the ball. But as Nebraska says, they're chasing three. They're trying to flip those 13-10 losses into 14-13 wins or something better than that. So I thought just, again, the ease with which Raiola operated the offense, made the reads, and then the pieces around him that set him up for success, really, I think the more that people are going to think about it and talk about it in the next 4 months, the more excitement there's going to be for a turnaround season.
Well, Evan, you said kind of be careful. Don't take any corners too sharply with the hype train. But this is Nebraska we're talking about. Nebraska is the off-season national champ year after year after year for a reason. It's because of the fans. So I think that's
always hope. That's
a little bit unavoidable. And if you play at Nebraska and you're expecting there to not be hype during the offseason, you're at the wrong spot. It's something you have to deal with. My question to you is with national hype. I mean, we're hearing more and more national folks chime in about Dylan Raiola, his performance in the spring game. Do you worry about national hype with this team? Because this team already has to put up with the year after year Nebraska fan hype. Say Nebraska wins a couple games, start the year next year, and they're America's darling because they're finally back, quote unquote. Is that good or bad for the team?
I think you probably want to let it play out a little bit before you crown anybody, anything. I think back to the 2019 team, I should say, where they had the preseason ranking kind of based on a lot of the way they finished the 2018 season with Adrian Martinez as a freshman, and that team just wasn't ready for it. It just, it hadn't really accomplished anything, and it became apparent quickly that team, it was premature for that sort of a ranking. And I don't know how well the fans or the players handled that or processed that at the time. So, again, the defense was good last year. I think it has a chance to be pretty good again this year. And certainly, as we just laid out, there's a ton of reasons to be optimistic about what the offense can be. But I don't know that starting, 3-0 even is really going to be something that should justify a ranking necessarily, unless they're running away with every game and just looking totally dominant. But, I do think the way the schedule sets up in the first half, it's as good of an on-ramp as you can hope for, with a new quarterback, with a second-year program looking to take off under Matt Rule, the way he's done it at Temple and Baylor previously. So I do think if Nebraska is able to navigate that on-ramp well, then, yeah, maybe after a month there is a number next to their name if things start off well and the offense is performing well. But, I think nationally they've been off the radar for so long that it's hard to give them the benefit of the doubt, even with a former five-star prospect like Dylan Raiola in the mix. I think probably the national media is in a similar spot to a lot of fans, which is, hey, it's great. There's a lot of potential, but now, as we've said for how long, go out and prove it, do it on the field, and when the scoreboard says it, then I think you can react with a ranking appropriately.
Evan, a couple minutes here before we got to take a quick timeout, but the combo of Rule and Raiola understanding what Nebraska is, this place, this expectations, the fan base, the hope and the hype, could you ask for two better options to navigate through this?
Yeah, they're both prepared in their own ways. I mean, obviously Matt Rule this is not his first rodeo as a head coach. He's been a head coach in the NFL where the spotlight's just as bright and just as hot when things aren't going well. So that's not new for him. And I think he's proven abundantly in his year plus on the job that he's comfortable being in the spotlight and going out and interacting with fans and just kind of living his life. So I think that's something Nebraska hasn't had in a head coach in a while. And then you look at Raiola, who, he should still be getting ready to graduate high school here this month, but you look at his upbringing, obviously the son of a Husker legend in Dom, but then also just being raised around professional athletes and greatness, mixing it up with Matthew Stafford or, now Patrick Mahomes and training with him. This is somebody who's played at a high level, been around people who have high expectations for themselves for, most of his life. So I do think in that sense too, it doesn't feel like, at least at this point, any moment has been too big for him in recruiting and in his spring game debut, what have you. And that's not to say there won't be hiccups or things the defense will throw at him or he'll be sacked as the season comes around. But it does feel like those guys are as prepared for the Nebraska Fishbowl as any quarterback-coach combo they've had in a while.
Evan, hang tight. We'll get a couple of minutes on the other side on tonight in Nebraska K-State. All right, hang on for us.
Sounds good.
All right, Evan Bland with us from the Omaha World Herald at Evan Bland, OWH, where you follow him, omaha.com, where you read him. We'll get some thoughts on K-State, reeling from the Creighton sweep. What can Nebraska do tonight? Hail Varsity continues, powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Couple minutes left here. Evan Bland with us. It's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager. Evan, the Wildcats come to town. They are great at thieving bases. Enough pop in the lineup, and Nebraska is soul-searching.
Yeah, a little bit. Certainly in the midweek they are, and tonight will be even a bigger challenge than usual for them. They're starting Jackson Brockett, who's making his first start of the year. They used 8 pitchers against Creighton last night, so they're going to be digging even deeper into their bullpen tonight. Kansas State, incidentally, hasn't played since a doubleheader on Saturday, so Nebraska is at a major disadvantage when it comes to rest and bullpen arms and things of that nature, but I think they can make it up offensively. That's probably got to be the game plan for them tonight. They're facing a Kansas State starter who's got an ERA right around 7, who's proven to be pretty hittable this year, so I wouldn't come to the ballpark expecting a pitcher's duel necessarily, but this is a Kansas State team that's right around top 30 in the RPI, so it's an opportunity for Nebraska to boost its resume just a little bit more, make itself a little more comfortable for the at-large conversation, and then of course it turns to Minnesota this weekend, but just a chance to end a 5-game midweek losing streak on maybe a little bit more of a positive note.
Do you have confidence in their ability to do that? I look at the first inning last night and seeing a team that just was not ready to play like Creighton was. Creighton has had Nebraska's number this season. It really feels like it comes down to intensity and want to rather than talent.
Yeah, in that particular series, it sure has, and it's fascinating because Creighton's been the exact opposite. Like, they get up for Nebraska and they tighten up in the weekend, which is why they're 4-7 in the Big East and currently wouldn't even be in their conference tournament. But here they are, 11-0 in the midweek, and they swept a couple from Coastal Carolina too. So, yeah, I mean, it's a confounding thing for Nebraska because it's not like they're not trying. It's not like they don't care. I mean, they clearly do. I think it maybe underscores the strength of this team is its starting pitching on the weekends. The fact that Brett Sears goes out and throws a quality start just about every time out, or what Mason McConaughey's done and Will Walsh. And so it's been a lot harder for them to piece it together in the midweek. In hindsight, the coaches wish they would have started Caleb Clark, who had 3 scoreless after Ty Horn got hit around, with 5 unearned runs. So they're trying to figure it out. Ultimately, there's only 2 of these left, tonight and South Dakota State next week. And then really the only other time you may have to deal with this is in the conference tournament or potentially an NCAA regional too. So it's getting toward the end of the regular season here, but I think there are still roles, especially on the pitching side, to be figured out as this coaching staff tries to figure out who are those arms that you can trust in the moment beyond some of the obvious guys at the top.
Evan, 30 seconds. Does Nebraska have to win the Big Ten postseason to get in? I know there's baseball left, but what's your feel right now from an at-large standpoint?
No, I don't think so. I mean, they're top 25 right now, 24. 2 of their last 3 weekend opponents, Minnesota and Michigan State, they're going to be heavy favorites. They've got Indiana at home. So I think barring, losing a midweek to South Dakota State and maybe not winning another weekend series, I think they're in really good shape. So, no, I don't think they have to win in Omaha to get in. Barring a complete collapse, I think they're probably safely in as a 2 seed or maybe a 3 in the regional if things get a little hairy.
Evan, enjoy the ball game tonight. We're looking forward to the coverage. Thanks for a few minutes today.
Thanks, guys. See ya.
All right, there he is, Evan Bland. Good to spend time with him. The what-if game with Nebraska football in 2024. We'll check in with Joba Chamberlain next hour.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbal.
Back into it at Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager. Let's talk some baseball. Joba Chamberlain, Husker great, 2-time World Series champ with us. Joba, I need you to figure out how to get this rain out of the eastern part of the state. I know it's been off and on. And any magic, man? How you doing?
Careful, Schmidt. There's Farmer's House in this show.
Well, yes. May they have all the rain they want and need.
Just keep it out of Lincoln.
Just keep it by them where they need it. We've actually gotten pretty lucky with kind of how the rain has fell with like our games, but I'm ready for some more consistent weather. This back and forth stuff with hot, cold, and rain. I'm ready to get to the summer, and now I'll complain about being too hot. So sure. I guess it's one or the other.
Well, if there's any consolation, Sunday could be a beautiful day for some golf.
Yeah.
Partly sunny and 70 degrees on Sunday. It sounds like maybe minimal wind.
Dust the clubs off.
It's a little early in Nebraska, 4 days out to be saying minimal wind because you never know. But Sunday might be all right.
Minimal, considering.
Celebrate a decent win.
Yeah.
Minimal wind meaning less than 20 miles per hour.
Uh-huh. Yeah, you don't need to use the old driver, 150 in. Joba, let's talk Nebraska baseball. Tough one again for the Big Red last night in Omaha against Creighton. Swept by the Jays. Creighton is incredible. Midweek, Nebraska has not been. These midweek games are a little different than last year in the sense that Nebraska has scheduled for opportunity, and they don't necessarily take the RPI hit like they did a year ago, but they're just struggling, man. It's been over a month since they've won midweek, and a chance tonight against K-State to get back on a roll. There's just been really two arms that have been consistent for Nebraska, and that's your Friday, Saturday options.
Yeah, it's perplexing on how and what you see and how you can. Is there one dynamic that obviously stands out specifically? No, because we've lost games different ways, and I think does it create momentum? I think when you have Sears throwing on Friday, you always try to use these midweeks to create the momentum going into the weekend. Mm-hmm. And it's always nice having a guy like that when, we haven't won a midweek game in a month, that to know that you're going to get a chance to get started on the right foot. So we've lost games in so many different ways. I mean, six runs in the first. We haven't seen that happen all year. We've
5 unearned.
Five unearned, and we've seen the bullpen give up runs here and there, but we haven't seen that. So I don't know what the difference. I like the fact that we're scheduling tougher midweek games, but also too, it just feels like sometimes we don't treat them as important as some of the other teams, and then we get another chance to find that out tonight. Which this obviously we didn't get to face them the first time, so we'll see if we can bounce back. And I don't foresee us having that type of letdown and just the bounce back. And we've all seen and heard Bolt say like they're not playing to the best of their potential, and that's obvious. We've all seen it, but they still get a chance, and they hold it in their hands. They have to take some charge and figure out what they think they need to get figured out, and hopefully we turn it around and can continue to get another win streak so we can try to create some momentum.
Well, Joba, you look at it, only 2 midweek games left on the slate. You have Kansas State this week tonight. You have South Dakota State next Wednesday. And you have 3 weekend series. You got Minnesota, Indiana, Michigan State. The Indiana series you circle. They're currently 4th in the Big Ten standings, tied with you, Nebraska, at 10-5 on the conference slate. Nebraska only a game back from Purdue and Illinois. When it comes down to it, really, it's about Nebraska taking care of the weekend series here if they want to get a good seeding within the Big Ten tournament and give themselves a shot at a NCAA regional, which as it stands right now, they're in, not as a host, but they are in to the NCAA tournament. So what do these remaining 3 weekend series mean to you? And what is the importance of the midweek whenever you compare it to the weekend series for these last couple of weeks of the year?
I think we've touched on this before previously, where when it comes down to it, the midweek is one of those ones where it helps the record, and we've obviously scheduled it to not kill us in the RPI. But now if you go out and take care of business and you get 3 series wins, which we're going to have a tough one, but put themselves in good situations because of the weekends that they have had. And it puts us in a good spot. Obviously, you always want to host. That's the end goal before, the first step in getting to where you want to be. But you can't really harp on it too much, because at this point you got to focus on getting where you want to be in the Big Ten and get a good seed to potentially put yourself in a better either regional. Because I don't think there's any chance we host at this point, but put us in a good spot to be able to make a run and do some things in the tournament that could put us in a better regional. And I think you just only having 2 left, you can't really focus on them now. Now it's like, hey, let's take care of business and keep winning series on the weekend and put us in a right headspace going into the Big Ten tournament, because then, as we all say, we feel like this is preseason. Then when we start the Big Ten, then we get into the season. So I think that's what you've got to focus on now, is handling business and winning those series.
Joba, can this season be a success if Nebraska doesn't make the NCAA tournament?
I don't think so. I think, and I say that not because would it be a complete failure? No, but it's not how you start; it's how you finish. And I think when they set the precedent early on in the year and going into it, I think when you break it down and look how it all started and then how it finished, and if we don't get the opportunity, I think obviously, for me personally, I don't know if everybody would look at it that way, but the opportunities and the situations that, put ourselves in, we're like, okay, here we go. So I think we'll get in, but if we didn't, I personally would see it as a failure, I think, and I may be on an island by myself on that one. But
I think there's a whole clubhouse that's on that island with you. I mean, I think they expect to go to a regional. The Baseball American numbers are out for this week. Joba and Elijah. Nebraska still a 2 seed in the Oklahoma State regional. As of now, there's only 2 Big Ten teams that are in. Nebraska as they're starred as the Big Ten champion, and then Purdue gets the at-large. Illinois is past the first 4 out. They're among the second 4 out.
Well, Illinois needs to do something away from their home field. They're 16-1 at home, and 5-10 on the road, 5-4 in neutral site games.
So your last 4 in, Florida, Louisville, Purdue, and Utah. Kansas is the first 4 out. They've swept Nebraska 2-0. Creighton is not in. And with Creighton's RPI, and I know they're not good in Big East play, but damn, they're great midweek. I'd vote them in just based on their season. I know conference is important, but they've done enough work so far to me. They got to rally for sure. And find a way to win some series here in the Big East. But I think they're a good enough ball club to get an at-large. And I don't know if that's ever happened before. You're not in your conference tournament, but yet you get an at-large, probably out of the SEC. I don't know, but it's just real interesting. Nebraska's still holding steady at that 2 seed. What's possible? You've been on a lot of ball clubs. What's possible to get flipped around?
I think just the consistency of kind of what we're doing and basically wipe away everything that's happened. You're 0-0 starting today and kind of approach it that way. And you put yourself obviously, and it's all projections, and we know those can change. And we've all seen it that way. But I think just mentality wise, clean slate. Throw the midweeks out. Obviously, you still got to play. You got 2 more. But focus on what lies ahead and the opportunity that you have to keep that 2 seed and give yourself an opportunity. And maybe crazier things have happened and maybe something wild happens. But I think just moving forward based upon listening and reading Will's comments and how he feels like they haven't even reached that potential yet and the best that they can be, then you kind of just clean slate it and be like, hey, we know we are good. Let's go. Let's start from here. And we put ourselves in a good position at this point. So let's continue to keep putting ourselves in great positions. And then we'll go into it with a different mindset of, you can kind of wash it away. Know that you put yourself in a good position, not great like it could have been, but just clean slate it and just know it's like, okay, it starts today. We've got a month left basically before everything gets going. And I think that's a great approach. I think individually, I think it's a great approach for some guys, and I think as a whole, because there's always those times that some of us have to look in the mirror to make ourselves better, because if we don't do that, we don't make our team any better, and I think that's a huge part of it.
Joba will wrap with some high school baseball district action this weekend. Of course, Southwest gets rolling at 11 a.m. But overall, how do you feel about some of the Lincoln and Metro schools moving forward, districts and beyond?
Well, it's nice to have 2 Lincoln teams hosting. I can tell you that much. and us being one of them is an added bonus. But baseball has just gotten so much better. Like, we lost 2-1, 1-0. Like, and yeah, we were on the losing end of it. And we won our first game of the year 1-0. It's just the competitiveness, and like even the couple games that we were on the losing, like that was fun baseball to watch.
It's good ball,
and it's just competitive. You've got some really, really good baseball players. You've got some really, really good athletes, and I just think it's nice to see the back and forth of, like, we've all seen how basketball has been kind of Omaha driven. Now it's nice because East did what they did last year. Now you've got us, and you've got Grand Island, and you have different dynamics. I mean, obviously you've got the Millard West and the Millard South and those guys, but it's nice to see the atmosphere that some of these games have created too for these kids to play in. And I think that's a really cool dynamic. And you've got some really good players. You got Lewis from Millard West, where they had 20 major league scouts at the game. We played Millard West when Carter actually pitched, and there were 8 college scouts. There were 10 big league regional guys. So it's just, I don't think we're getting left behind anymore like we used to. And I don't know if that's due to, it partly probably has something to do with these summer circuits and all of those things, because now people are getting noticed more, or, a really good showcase kid. So they come and watch them during the games. But it's been a fun year. It's been roller coasters, and we've had really, really good games, and it's just been a fun year. I mean, emotionally for me, it was probably a little different because it's Carter's last year of baseball, but I made it through because I'm like, well, I'm still going to get to see him play baseball in college. So yeah. I haven't broke down completely. I've been close a couple times, but I've made it through. I made it through senior night, and it'll be hard when it's all done, because seeing the kids that will never play baseball again, that's the part that gets me. And it's just been fun to see these, and some of the kids, you've watched their journey from, they grew up together playing basketball against each other, baseball against each other. So I think that's even the cooler part, is watching these kids' growth and watch them mature and go to the next step. And it's just been fun all the way around.
Well, Joba, some of those guys may never play baseball again. I do want to say we could always use more umpires. You could put in a quick word. You could always give back to the game a little bit, stay around the game, come up and umpire with one Elijah Herbal. You could always put that in their ear, just to let you know.
Well, yeah, and I mean, the amount of money Carter is getting paid to do a 12, 13, 14U game, I'm like, man, this is crazy. You want to make some side scratch? Go over here and, and go ahead and get your ball and strike. Did we work on that strike call yet, Elijah? Or are we're still rocking this one?
Oh, we're still rocking the hammer. So the thing is, we talked about this on the Triple Play podcast. Check that out if you haven't. Tall umpires, it tends to be the advice to go with the hammer up top, because the short guys have to go to the side so everybody can see it. But if you're tall, you're over top of the catcher and the batter, you can go with the hammer. I can work on it this summer if you really want me to. I can get in front of the mirror, I can get some reps in, and I can flip to the side if you really think so.
It just looks better.
Okay.
I just want the Frank Drebin.
The moonwalk?
Yeah. The naked
from
gun.
Naked Gun. Yeah, that's where I'm going. Joba will check in again soon, bud. Thanks again. We'll get a triple play pod this week as well. Appreciate you tuning in, man.
You got it. Anytime, guys.
Hail Varsity Radio is live. Now, back to Schmitty
Schmitty's a great guy, but he don't have a brain.
and Elijah
You want me to speak? When I point at you, yeah.
on Hail Varsity Radio.
Open phones here this segment, 489-1240, and can find us in the Stream Hail Varsity YouTube channel. I think our friends at 590 are switching to Husker baseball pregame coverage at 5:30. Can follow along, though, on the stream. You want to keep tuning us in. Good for you. The Hail Varsity YouTube channel or the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter feed. You want to go check Gus out? Go for it. All good.
Quickly here, are you seeing this comment in from Trevor in the stream right now? He says,
About the Irish fight?
I watched 2 Irish Army guys fight in kilts in Rapid City one time. We were on orders when I was in the Army. I had to break it up, and the bar owner gave me free whiskey all night. The guys also gave him Irish money for breaking it up. It's a fun little story.
Yeah, this goes back to the strip club fight in downtown Lincoln yesterday afternoon, and how chairs were being thrown, and a couple of folks. And I don't have stage name nor real identities.
No, I think we do have real identities now.
Do we?
Names have been released.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, anywho,
Just of the 2 that were arrested, though.
okay.
Yeah.
Not the whole issue. Do we know motive? What started the whole thing?
No.
Was it Vikings suck, Packers are great, or vice versa?
So why am I working at 4 o'clock on a Tuesday? There's nobody here. They're all listening to Hail Varsity Radio.
I don't know the percentage of our listenership that visits.
Well, if you do visit, just know you can put an earbud in. You can listen to us while you enjoy the show.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Right. Multitask, as they say.
Back to sports.
Reminder to buckle up. Use your seatbelt. It saves lives, prevents injuries only if properly worn. Make it click. A message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. Also, a reminder here when we talk about tornado damage. Nearly 900 homes reporting some sort of damage in Douglas County from Friday's devastation. 166 destroyed, 179 major damage, 140 minor damage, 353 folks affected with some light damage. Bill Shammert tweeting that out. And that leads me to how you can help and give back to Nebraskans in this time of crisis. And your friends at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill, just a quick reminder, are there when it comes to non-perishable food items, clothing, the toiletries that you're going to need if you've been displaced. And you're welcome to stop by with any of those items between 11 a.m. and 7 p.m. the rest of the week. And drop off and help those in need, and can also text Red Cross and text Red Cross in all caps. That's the big thing to do with donating $10. So, time is real for folks trying to get through this. The text line is 90999 for the Red Cross, and Heartland Hope and Project Intentional are distributing those items to folks in need. So drop some items off if you feel like it to the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill in La Vista the rest of the week. 2024, lots of question marks, lots of hype and excitement post-spring game, and I know it's already Wednesday. The spring game was Saturday. National talking heads are wowed, but being cautious. How about you as a Nebraska fan? Let's play what if. What if ... And let's circle this what if being Nebraska's defense. Talk has been about skill positions, offensive line, your quarterback options. What do you expect? And then what if one thing is true? Do you expect the defense to be as good as last year? better than last year? Is there a drop-off from last year? You've got eight starters back, secondaries loaded. We're talking you're starting 11, but let's not kid ourselves. There's 25 to 30 guys that rotate in. Nebraska and Mr. Tony are situationally built to deal with you if you're Iowa's offense, if you're Maryland's offense, or somewhere in between. Are you spread? Are you pro style? You got to stop both in the Big Ten. Time will tell if Nebraska's secondary can get better in man coverage on third down. Time will tell if Nebraska's pass rush can take a leap and get after folks on 3rd and 7. Can they get off the field on 3rd and 7? But overall, Nebraska's defense probably allowed, 17 points a ball game? Fair?
I think it averaged out to 19 something.
Was it 19?
19 and change, but
19 and change.
Is a fair number.
But really, I mean, most of those Big Ten battle royales were
it's 17 if you throw the Michigan game to the side.
Right, the 13. Right, 13's the number. Can you score more than 13 points? Can you hold teams to 2 touchdowns or less? I think if you don't get hurt, you've got to jump by that second-year group of freshmen that played really well, and you've got Nash and Robinson anchor in the middle. Brother, I think this defense can be better. Maybe that's too much Kool-Aid right now, but I think the defense can be better, and I think Nebraska is going to be able to adjust or anticipate what offensive coordinators saw last year. And you had a whole bunch of new faces playing last Saturday, and that's just more work for them to get in game time situation. You're going to have a lot of experience and talent on that defensive side. They just, quite frankly, got to get better at getting after the quarterback and taking the football away.
Well, let me ask you the question. Whenever you look at last year's defense, what was the strength of that defense?
Sudden change. They got screwed time and time again with a turnover, interception, fumble, and it was short field. A lot of times, and I don't have the exact numbers, it was on the wrong side of the 50. Mm-hmm. There is no right side of the 50 when you're turning the football over and you got to come back out. The way they came out and held teams to field goals or just flat out turned them away. I mean, think of the Northwestern start, for God's sake. Think about the brutal position, how bad halftime could have been in Boulder. Your 9-minute mark and it's 13-7 because you turned away Colorado repeatedly. Eventually the levee broke, right? And I do think Nebraska wore down defensively. I thought some of their tackling, just because guys were playing dinged up that late in the season in November, thought some of the tackling against Michigan State and Iowa and Maryland wasn't good. Wisconsin as well. Nebraska wasn't their usual tackling self. Once the calendar turned to November, they were a worn team. I think they'll be better off depth-wise. They're going to get help. They're going to get help on offense. They don't have to be as great, but I halfway expect them to be just as good, if not better.
Well, I look at it. Why were they good in those sudden change moments? They
were pissed.
Well, yeah. You had 2 monsters up front in Ty and Nash who are both back that would come onto the field angry, would make running not a possibility. Whenever you can make a team one-dimensional offensively, it's a very, very good sign. The question to me, in terms of how good can Nebraska be, is I think the defensive line can make a jump. Particularly, I want to see a jump from guys in Princeville and Cam Linhart getting after the pass.
Oh, James Williams.
James Williams as well. And that was like one of the small issues last year. Whenever Nebraska got to 3rd and 6, a likely passing down, they struggled to get off the field because they struggled to truly get after the passer like a high-level defense does. I think you have some more options there. Where I have concerns in Nebraska's ability to stop the run is the linebacker position. You have options there. You have guys that you saw on the field. How do they respond to a better workload? How are they able to develop through another offseason of work? I'm hopeful. I'm not sure, though, if that makes sense. Like the defensive line, I am pretty sure can maintain its level, if not get better than it was last year. I would say the same thing about the secondary. I'm confident in their ability to improve year after year and be better next year with some of the younger guys. Boodle, Ethan Nation making a jump, getting Singleton back onto the field. Tommy Hill making another jump from the defensive back room. We saw the jump he made last year. What are the linebackers able to do? And are the linebackers going to be good enough to make Big Ten offenses one-dimensional? combined with the fact that Big Ten teams, we've heard Matt Rule say it before, are going to have another offseason of film on Nebraska. And that's one of the things I look at in the spring game in terms of Nebraska. Heard a couple times this week, we've said it. Nebraska was somewhat soft defensively in the spring game. They held out a lot of starters. I wonder if Tony White has some things up his sleeve that he wants to hide until game one to keep Big Ten teams off balance and make them re-scout and re-game plan against Nebraska, so you can't just recycle some of those things that were starting to work against Nebraska at the end of the season. I think it's going to, personally, I think it's going to be difficult for Nebraska to get better on defense. You do have some pieces to replace, and you have Big Ten teams that are going to have another year of game planning what you want to do. That being said, I don't think it's impossible for Nebraska to get better. It has to start at the linebacker position for me. Those guys need to exceed expectations through the offseason and be better than we're all expecting. If they can do that, just the linebacker room, I think this defense can be better because you would assume they're going to continue to be stingy against the run if that's the case. They can make offenses one-dimensional. If you can make offenses dimensional in the 3-3-5, as we've seen from Tony White last year, Tony White can make your life hell if you're one-dimensional.
To me, where I'm buying stock that they'll be as good or better is look at what you got in year one with Tony White, with a whole bunch of new coaches and a whole bunch of new players, and they were that good in year one. Give him a second year where you're just flying because you know what you're doing. Give some reinforcements or the cavalry where a Lenhart, a Princewell, a Van Poppel, right, are ready to maul because they have it down. And in the linebacking spot, you got Stefan that is talented and knows the White system. You've got Buddha, right, there, Roman, and then Bayer, I really like. I think they could add another body or develop. You've got some young guys in Stenger that is a nice hybrid. And then you got to find that answer opposite Tommy Hill. You've got Buford. You've got Giff. You have Singleton.
Opposite Tommy Hill?
No, I'm just saying.
That's already locked up in the secondary.
Yeah, that's part of the secondary. And you bring guys. You have Hartzog, who's played a lot of ball, and if he can stay at safety, that's probably a better spot for him. But that kid competes, and he's talented. Ethan Nation. So I'm not. Again, this sounds like buckets of Kool-Aid today, but no. I mean, if they were this good already, and think of the guys they're getting ready. The next wave of year one guys that saw time and got better. You couple that with an offense and you find a way to make sure punting is good and find a way to kick some clutch field goals. I think you're in a good spot.
Another thing I ask is if this offense allows you to play with the lead, does that make the defense better or worse? Whenever the opposing offense has more urgency,
they won't know what to do.
Clock.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you at Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbal. We welcome in Dr. Brandon Seifert with Nebraska Orthopedic Center, a Jock Doc Wednesday, and Mike Trout is going to need some surgery, a torn meniscus. That's the word from, you have the Angels GM announcing. No timetable on a return right now. And Dr. Brandon, thanks for giving us a few minutes. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great, Chris. How are you fellas doing?
We're good. We are good. And let's talk about meniscus injury. And we've covered meniscus before, but Dr. Brandon, I don't think we've talked meniscus with baseball very often.
Yeah, we really haven't. It's kind of surprising that we haven't, seen more of these, at least talk more about these on the show. I do see a good amount of these in our baseball players. If we always like to start out with our anatomy lesson here. So if you talk about kind of anatomy, what is the meniscus? We've had some discussions about it on here before. Essentially, anatomically, what the meniscus is. So in the knee joint, there's kind of a C-shaped structure that's on each side of the knee, acts as kind of a shock absorber. That's what we're talking about when we talk about meniscus. So it has kind of shock absorbing properties to it. Also has kind of a stabilizing force to it as well. And so that's the structure we're talking about. Typically, typically in our young athletes, these are usually are fairly traumatic type injuries, some type of what we call axial loads, kind of load the knee, foot's planted and kind of twist one direction. Sometimes it's kind of that deep bending, squatting motion with that foot again planted in the ground. Part of that meniscus gets kind of captured inside the knee and gets kind of squeezed or squished, and then a piece of that usually tears. Sometimes the piece, kind of tears all the way away on one side. We call it a Hurrdat type tear that's still attached on the other. And then you essentially end up with this kind of loose piece that's kind of flipping in and out of the joint. Sometimes you'll have a thing called a bucket handle tear. So think about what a bucket handle looks like. So you've got two ends of the meniscus is attached, and you have this middle section that's free, and that kind of flips over on itself like a bucket handle. And those would be kind of some classic tears that we typically see, especially our young athletes. And then from there, you can have pain with that. Again, this kind of intermittent or kind of random instability, catching, locking type symptoms are typically what we see with like meniscus injuries, and that's what these players will complain of.
It's Dr. Brandon Seifert with us here, a Jock Doc Wednesday on Hail Varsity Radio, talking Mike Trout, the meniscus tear. And Dr. Brandon, it's interesting you mentioned the bucket handle tear. That reminds me, back in high school, my buddy Dozy, playing football together with him, he had a bucket handle tear of the meniscus, had no idea what it meant, and I went and did some research of my own. 6 different types of meniscus tears is what I was able to find. It appears my Google search I've done today has confirmed that. How much does the type of meniscus tear affect the re-injury rate? How long it's going to take Mike Trout to get back on the field? What type of factors are we talking here based on which of the 6 types of tear he actually has?
Yeah, I know. Great question on that. So a lot of factors kind of play into, what type of, procedure we do. Can you repair it? You just clean it up? Those types of things. So typically for us, the 2 big factors are, yes, the type of tear, so the shape of the tear. Is there still a component of that tear that's still attached? So are both ends still attached, just the middle portion that's, torn? That plays a role in whether or not you can fix it or not, or even more importantly, kind of the healing rates of it if you do try to fix it. And then the second part of this is the meniscus is just not a great kind of vascular or a great structure with good blood supply. And so the blood supply to the meniscus is kind of a very outer peripheral rim, some say about a third of it, sometimes it's less than that. And so you want to try, if you're going to fix these, like repair these, sew it back together, then you want to be in an area that's in a good blood supply zone. So for example, when we classify these, we'll classify them as kind of the red zone, where basically you have kind of red on both sides of the tear. You kind of get more of your tears in what we call the red-white kind of zone, where you have basically blood on one side and then kind of not great blood supply on the other. And then, of course, there's those white tears where there's basically no blood on either side. And those obviously have less kind of healing rates than others. Just isolated meniscus tears, the healing rates are not as good. Where we see pretty awesome healing rates for meniscus tears, like when you repair them, would be in the setting of something else like an ACL tear. And really the big thing for that is with an ACL tear, if you're fixing it, there's obviously just bleeding that occurs in the knee secondary to the ACL surgery. Well, that bleeding obviously helps you. If you're fixing the meniscus, you're going to get some bleeding from that. It helps the meniscus heal.
Dr. Brandon Seifert's with us, Nebraska Orthopedic Center at Jock Doc Wednesday, and we're talking Mike Trout, meniscus tear. And Dr. Brandon, from an age standpoint, you look at Trout's age, and he's been playing a long time, and he's not a spring chicken, but he's not gray and old either. But when you look at his recovery and response to this, age-wise, how much will this deter his return time? I mean, how does age factor in your opinion?
Yeah, with age with these, so obviously kind of the older we get, the kind of less the kind of healing rates are, if you will. So you do worry about, his healing rate probably being a little bit less in an isolated situation like this. If it is a tear that looks like it's fairly amenable to repair, sewing it back together, then his healing rate's probably a little bit less just based on his age. Not a super high, kind of less risk of healing. And so that's one of the things you worry about. And then, the other big thing with him is you do kind of factor in kind of that age and a meniscus injury. Our big question always is, what's the re-injury risk with meniscus injury? And so there was a pretty good study put out with like NFL football players, and we've quoted this before, and they looked at NFL football players that had a previous meniscus surgery, but it was basically a cleanup on the meniscus. They didn't fix it, they just cleaned it up. And it basically said in that study that 50% of those players will have a repeat tear within 5 years, which is kind of a sobering statistic. And that number's kind of out there. And that recurrent tear risk for just kind of across the spectrum for athletes is probably somewhere in that kind of 20% going up to 50% within 5 years. So there is a pretty high re-injury risk. That's in just the cleanup side. If you're looking at it purely from, what are the healing rates for a athlete that has, a meniscus repair in a setting that's isolated, there's not an ACL injury with it, it's a pretty wide variation there. Anywhere from 65% up to maybe 75 in some studies, even maybe up to almost kind of high 80s in others, which is pretty optimistic.
Well, he's 32, but he's been playing for 11 years into year 12, so there's mileage on the field from what I'm saying.
And you can see it in his injury history. I mean, 2021 missed 139 days with a calf strain. 2022 missed over a month with back inflammation. Last year, missed 90 days with a broken bone in his left hand, and now he got the torn meniscus. It's 4 consecutive seasons of Mike Trout missing a good portion of the season due to injuries.
So maybe the mileage isn't that high because of the missed season. But
or you could argue with all those injuries, the mileage is very high.
Right on. I mean, the engine's gonna crack out on him. But Dr. Brandon, about 45 seconds here. From a power standpoint, how vital is that meniscus region to degenerating what we know Trout for being, and that's a guy that can crush the home run?
Yeah, absolutely. And so that definitely can have an impact, and really more from kind of a pain perspective. The more meniscus you lose, if let's say this is a meniscus they can't repair, so you lose meniscus, that surface pressure goes up in the knee, that's more painful, you start to break down your cartilage faster. That definitely could have an impact on him long term. He's played so much baseball already, even though he's not that old, he probably already has some cartilage wear that's starting, and these two things kind of acting together, so meniscus injury and some cartilage wear, that surface pressure starts to really ramp up. That can really create some issues for a player, maybe cut down on kind of the longevity he has in the league. And so there is some risk there. Then again, for him, with his power, his strength, his playing ability, he's one of those folks that probably is at a fairly increased risk of basically re-injuring this knee or having a re-tear in that meniscus.
Dr. Brandon, we'll check in next week. Thanks for a few minutes today.
Okay, fellas. You guys take care.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Good stuff. Big thanks to Joba Chamberlain, Evan Bland, Mr. Husker Football, Mike Babcock, and Dr. Brandon Seifert for the Jock Doc. Tomorrow on the show, Brandon Vogel from Counter Reed will run down Jeremiah Searles. Coach Gary Barnett, can't wait to talk to Barney about the week that's been with Coach Prime and working on Danny Burke. So, pretty cool Twitter posting of Bill Murray riding the subway for the Cubs-Mets. And I don't know if the Cubs and Mets have played. Let me pull up the baseball schedule or if it's just a dated picture. But it's Bill Murray riding the subway to get to Citi Field.
Oh,
and you got Bill Murray wearing his Bears sweatshirt and his Cubs hat, and he's with a bunch of Cubs fans.
They did, in fact, play yesterday. The Mets won 4-2.
So it's a current pick. This is awesome. You ever bumped into anybody famous out in public headed to a ball game?
I've told you this story, I think, about how I tried to go meet Bill Murray when he came for a Nebraska game.
Oh, okay. What game was he at?
It was an early season game.
Was it during last season?
No, it was like 2019.
Okay.
I think it was Frost's first year. It may have been the Colorado game.
Okay.
I can't quite remember, but he was taking a little tour down of like the locker room area.
What was he in town for?
The football game.
Just wanted to see Nebraska?
Something like that. I don't know.
Wanted to see Colorado?
All I know is I went down and tried to go meet Bill Murray.
Actually, his kid coaches, right? His kid coaches UConn basketball assistant, I think.
News to me.
Yeah. I think his kid's an assistant at UConn.
Well, basically,
basketball.
Long story short, I tried to use my all-access pass to go down and meet Bill Murray. Made it very far because it was an all-access pass. Thanks, Husker Vision. Shout out. Some of the formative years there at working at Husker Vision.
And then your picture was up. Do not let this man near Bill Murray.
Well, the thing is like they give us like 3.5 hours between when our camera checks are done, when we do back at our camera, just to give ourselves time to fix anything should it go wrong, because if you have anything go wrong with Husker Vision on a game day, it's worst case scenario. So we give ourselves plenty of time, so we have time to just go wander around the stadium and do what we want to do. And I was like, I'm making it my mission to go meet Bill Murray. So I'm walking down through the tunnel walk. Kids are giving me high fives because they think I'm more important than I am. Like, make it back to the locker room. Yeah. They think I'm important. I'm not.
Hey, Johnny, that new freaking tackle looks a little lean.
Looks a little fat. Not really an athlete. Doesn't look like he can jump much. Skinny legs.
Lean in the arms and legs, and boy, can he work the flavored wing counter.
But anyway, I make it back all the way to like the locker room, and there's some players in there that are half suited up, waiting for pregame warm-ups. They're watching like other football games on TV, and that's the point when I realized, like, hey, I probably shouldn't be back here. It's me surrounded by players and football coaching staff and whatnot, but I'm trying to go meet Bill Murray. They eventually stopped me at the locker room doors, and I missed out on meeting Bill Murray, and I was disappointed. But there's no good resolution to that story. It's just I wanted to go meet Bill Murray, and I failed, but I got the red carpet experience for one day at Memorial Stadium.
Well, he'll find a way to get down there next fall, I'm sure.
I want to see Will Ferrell at Memorial Stadium again when USC comes to town. Not this year, but eventually.
Will was fun. I think it was Will and Snoop.
Yep.
In 06. Nope, hold on. 07.
Mm-hmm.
That game has been blacked out of my mind.
Give me a spot in Snoop's box.
Okay. That window's open. Windows open. Back tomorrow at 4 on Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager. Thanks.